Hi, welcome to Spooked with Emma. I'm Emma and this is part 9 of the last 6 days. There are 12 parts altogether, so if you enjoy this, please subscribe so you don't miss anything. And if you want to buy the paperback or the ebook, the links to buy those are in the description below. When I woke up, I didn't know where I was for a second. I rubbed my eyes sleepily, then my heart froze when I realised that I was back in the apartment, and I immediately sat up in bed in a panic. But then I saw Julian sitting in the chair next to the bed and smiling at me, and I was so relieved when I remembered what had happened. He must have been sitting there all night. I smiled at him, and he said hello and asked me how I'd slept. I said I'd slept really well, but that he must have been uncomfortable trying to sleep sitting up in that chair. And he said that it didn't matter because he didn't need to sleep, he just wanted to look after me and make sure I was okay. I said that after everything I'd been through here before, I couldn't believe that nothing had happened in the night. And he replied that of course nothing had happened because he'd been here. I still didn't realise how true that was. I thought maybe it was just good luck. Julian asked if I wanted breakfast, and I said I didn't have anything in the house, so he said he would go out and get something while I got dressed. I'd slept in my clothes again, I was just so tired. Before I came here I was never tired. Quite often I get in from parties at 3 AM, but I was never so tired that I even slept in my makeup, let alone fully dressed. And even when I was out late, I rarely slept in until after 8. I'd have breakfast and then go to the gym for about 9 or 9:30, when most of the morning gym goers had left for work, so I often had the place to myself. I was always full of energy. But here I felt different. Almost ever since I arrived, I felt like a zombie, like I'd had all the energy sapped out of me. Maybe I am a zombie, I'm not sure about anything anymore. I didn't even believe in zombies before, but now I think anything's possible. That's not true though, because I don't think it's possible that I'll get out of here. I just can't think properly anymore though. It would be easier if I could get all these cockroaches to be quiet so I could have some peace to try and make sense of it all. But they won't listen to me. They'll only listen to Julian. Nobody listens to me. I was trying to think about the breakfast, wasn't I, so I could finish writing the story. Julian went out and I got dressed. I didn't know what to wear. I wanted it to be something Julian would like. In the end I put on a yellow 50s style sundress, the same one I'm wearing now. I'd had compliments before when I'd worn it, so I thought it was a good choice. I wonder if I would have still chosen it if I'd known it would be my last outfit. I actually couldn't even remember bringing it with me to Spain, but it was in the wardrobe so I must have done, I guess. Or it got put here somehow. I didn't really even question it at the time. I put my hair in a ponytail. I usually don't because I think it makes me look too much like a teenager, but I felt it looked good with the dress and the sunshine. I made more of an effort with my makeup than I had done for a while, especially since I'd been here. I wanted Julian to think I looked pretty, so I put on some red lip gloss, red enough to be noticeable but not too vampy for daytime, and eyeliner with a flick, which I thought would make me look young and flirty and carefree. I spritzed on the perfume I'd bought the day before, and hoped that Julian would be impressed. It was definitely an improvement on how he'd left me when he went out, so I thought that there was a good chance he would be. If he came back anyway, I wasn't sure that he would after everything. I walked around the house trying to tidy it up a bit while I had the chance, and I was in such a good mood that I even started singing that JLS song to myself. It's been in my head for some reason. I couldn't even remember the words properly, so I was just humming some of them. If I die, would you come to my funeral? Would you cry? It was quite a gloomy song really, but I was in a good mood. I was tidying and singing and not even thinking about ghosts or anything else, and then I heard the door creak and I froze. But it was just Julian, of course, letting himself back in. I was suddenly embarrassed in case he'd heard me singing, but if he had, he didn't mention it. He'd brought some chocolate-covered pastries for breakfast that he said were called palmeritas, and some strawberries. He sat in his chair to eat, and I sat cross-legged on the bed. We hadn't eaten since lunchtime the day before, so I was really hungry again. Forgetting to eat wasn't something that I could do before I came here, although I would have wished I could. I tried the fasting diet. I tried most diets at one time or another, and the fast days were complete torture to me. I generally ate quite healthily, and I was at the gym most days, but I still always wanted to lose weight. I think that's normal though when you're wearing a size 10, but you're at parties with models and actresses who could easily fit into an age 10. It's funny now though, because after all the time I spent worrying about it while I was alive, I'm probably thinner than any of them now. My arms are just bones. It's silly that I never noticed that the floorboards in this apartment are covered in bones. I couldn't see them before. There are just bones everywhere, and the cockroaches are climbing all over them. There are so many. I don't know where they all could have come from. Maybe they were all hiding behind the skirting board, or maybe they were here the whole time like the bones and I just didn't see them. I wanted to ask Julian about his girlfriend, but I thought it was a bad time to bring it up while we were eating breakfast, especially since he hadn't really seemed like he wanted to talk about it when I had asked him before. So instead I asked him about his family and if they lived in Madrid too. He said he didn't have any family and that he'd lived in lots of different cities, but he'd been in Madrid for the last 3 years because of his work. I asked him how old he was and he wouldn't tell me. He just said that he was older than I probably thought he was. I didn't know what that meant, but I didn't want to ask him again in case I annoyed him. He asked me what I'd been doing since I left university, and when I told him that I still hadn't had a job since graduating, he asked me what my dream job would be. I told him I would love to be a writer, and he told me that that was a good aspiration to have and that he would try and help me with it. Ben had never encouraged me to write, even though he knew that's what I really wanted to do. He said that if I tried to write a book, it would be like saying that I was better than everyone else, and that the public would think I was a snob and hate me. He said that it was better for our image if I was a model or even a singer, which is how I ended up doing my underwear shoot. He never cared about what I wanted, just what was best for us. He just meant him, of course. Now at last someone was really interested in me and cared about what I wanted. When Julian said that, I thought that everything that had happened had been worth it because it had brought me to this moment, because now I had someone who really cared about me, and that meant that I was going to be happy. I couldn't imagine it working out any other way, but of course now I know that I couldn't have been any more wrong. We finished our breakfast and Julian took the plates away and washed up. That was my last breakfast. Chocolate palmeritas and strawberries. My last meal, in fact. If you're on death row, you get to choose your last meal, but most of the time the rest of us don't know at the time that we're eating our last meal. I certainly didn't. How far in advance do you have to choose your last meal when you're on death row, I wonder? What if you order a burger, but then on the day you feel like roast pork? Can you change it? Must depend on what time of day you're having it too, because you can't really eat fish and chips or something like that until at least 12 p.m. I think that probably whatever you choose, when you're eating it you think about all the other things you could have chosen instead and you regret the one you did choose. That must be awful if you know you should have gone for the full English breakfast and now there's not going to be another chance. If you knew you were about to die, would you feel like eating anyway? Or would you just be too nervous and sick to eat? I wish I could eat. It's been a long time since that breakfast. It would just make me sick again though, and the stomach cramps are so bad. I feel like my stomach's being eaten away from the inside. Maybe that's what's happening. I can't ask anyone though, so I guess I'll never know. I don't know if it's really important to know exactly how I'm dying anyway. On the first day, I felt like I was in worse pain than I had ever imagined in my life, but now I would be grateful to go back to that level of pain. The only thing that helps is passing out, which thankfully seems to be happening more often now, but I still keep coming back and then I get that awful realisation of what's happening. Not for much longer though. After breakfast, Julian asked me what I wanted to do that day. I said I hadn't really done much in Madrid except walk around the centre a bit, and he suggested that we could go to the Botanic Gardens. He said they were beautiful and one of his favourite places in Madrid. It sounded really nice. I loved flowers, and I was also happy that Julian was suggesting spending the day together. I'd been half expecting him not to come back after he went out to get breakfast, so this seemed almost like some kind of miracle. After everything I told him, not just about the ghost, but about Ben and everything else, I didn't feel like I'd really shown myself in the best light. But then I thought that maybe the fact that I instinctively opened up to him and told him things I wouldn't normally tell anyone could perhaps be a sign that we had a deeper connection. And he definitely didn't seem scared off. I was amazed at how happy I felt in this house when a couple of days before I couldn't imagine being here and feeling anything other than petrified and like I was in terrible danger, which is how I feel now of course, but at the time I felt completely safe with Julian around. It never occurred to me that the ghost would come back. I thought that it was all over. I can't believe how naive and stupid I was. How could I forget what I already knew? That I would never be safe in this house. Nobody ever could be. But would I have preferred to know what was going to happen to me? If the outcome was inevitable, then at least I'd had that short period of not being scared. But maybe it wasn't inevitable. Maybe I didn't get drawn back here by some power beyond my control, and maybe I was the one in control, and if I just trusted what I knew, then I could have decided to go home, and I could have decided not to die. But was I ever in control? I thought I was at the time. It never occurred to me that I wouldn't be, but I just don't know now. Maybe everything that's ever happened to me was to lead me here. Maybe it wasn't really me who decided to move to Spain. Maybe everything was decided for me. Maybe I'm not to blame for it. That's what I prefer to believe. I wonder how long it will take for someone to find me. Could be months. The rent's being paid by direct debit, so nobody from the estate agency is going to come round to try and throw me out. And realistically, my parents aren't even going to think anything of my lack of communication, at least until they get back from their cruise in a few weeks. And even if they start to worry, they're not just going to immediately fly over here to check up on me. And when they do, what are they going to find? Not their daughter, more like something from a horror film, or worse. I'm trying not to imagine what I'll look like as a corpse, especially once I've been decomposing for a while. They'll probably never get over it if they see me like that. Maybe they won't even be sure it's me and they'll have to wait for DNA results. And how will they even speak to the police anyway? They won't speak English. They'll need an interpreter to tell them it's their daughter's body. Maybe it will bring them closer together, but more likely they'll blame each other and never speak to each other again. Maybe they'll never speak again at all after that kind of trauma. I'm going to ruin their lives, and I can't do anything to stop it. They might spend the rest of their lives trying to find out what happened to me, but they never will. They won't find this, and how could they ever know otherwise? There's no way they could ever guess what's happened, not in a million years. Nobody could. I'm not sure I even believe it myself still. Julian was telling me about the botanic gardens, but I wasn't concentrating. He asked me if I was okay, and I said I was just tired still. He said maybe I was coming down with something, and it might be better if we didn't go out. I really wanted to go out though, and I said maybe if I just had a rest for a while, I'd be fine. I lay down on the bed, and Julian sat on the armchair next to the bed where he'd been all night. He asked me if I wanted to sleep, and I said no, I would just rest my eyes, but I wanted him to keep talking to me. He asked what about, and without even knowing I was going to do it, I said I wanted him to tell me about his girlfriend, the one who'd died. He didn't say anything for a few seconds, and I thought that I'd really done the wrong thing and made him angry with me. Maybe he would just get up and leave and I would never see him again. But he was still sitting in the chair, and finally he said that he hadn't been planning on doing this so soon, but perhaps it was the right time to tell me about her. He told me that her name was Elena and said that she was beautiful. His voice broke and I thought he might cry again. I found it really touching that he was so emotional, and it made him seem even more attractive. I'm ashamed to say I even felt a bit jealous of her. Does that mean I wished this on myself? I didn't mean that I wanted to be dead like her, it was just that he really seemed to love her and miss her, and I thought that if anything happened to me, I would want there to be a handsome man to cry for me and light candles and tell people that I was beautiful. He didn't say anything for a while, and I thought he was trying not to cry. Then he cleared his throat and carried on telling me about her. He said that she was a nurse on the children's ward in the hospital, and that she loved her job and the children she looked after, and that she wanted to have children of her own too, but she never got the chance. Me neither. I would have liked a girl, I think, but maybe that's because I never met a man I really wanted to have a child with. So whenever I thought about having children, I could only ever imagine a child that looked just like I did in pictures from when I was a toddler. But I was starting to think I'd like to know what Julian looked like when he was a little boy. I wondered if he'd wanted to have children with Elena. I guessed that he had because he'd brought up the subject, and it was one of the only things he told me about her. But I didn't want to ask when he was clearly already upset. I asked how long it had been since she died, and he said it had only been a few months. That explained why he was still so emotional about it. I wondered if it had been a bad idea to bring him here and involve him in all the problems with the ghost when the topic of death must still be really painful for him. I wondered how she had died, but I didn't want to upset him even more by making him tell me about what I thought must have been the most tragic event of his life. In my head, I was imagining him having a knock on the door and answering it to 2 police officers who were telling him that his girlfriend had been knocked down by a car and he was falling to the ground and sobbing. And then I was imagining that she was ill for a long time, and that at the end he was at her bedside holding her hand and stroking her forehead and talking to her, telling her she would be fine and shedding silent tears while she slipped away peacefully. I was half asleep, and I couldn't really even tell if I was imagining these scenarios, or if I was dreaming them, or if they were really happening. I wanted to know what had really happened to Elena, but I couldn't ask, and anyway I was too tired to speak, but I must have done, because suddenly his voice started to break again, and he said that she committed suicide. She killed herself with poison. I was falling asleep, and I couldn't really process what he was saying, but I was thinking about poison when I fell to sleep, and I had a really weird dream about Elena. Because it was a dream, I knew it was her, even though I'd never seen her, and in the dream she was a cartoon. and she was drinking different potions, like Alice in Alice in Wonderland, but instead of making her big and small, she was drinking them all, and one of them made her neck grow really long like a giraffe, and then another one made her grow wings, and she was flying all around, and she was laughing. But then at the end she drank one, and she and everything else went completely grey, as though the whole dream had turned into an old black and white film, and she started crying, and then she suddenly exploded, and hundreds of cockroaches burst out and they all ran away in different directions. I felt the cockroaches running all over my body, and I was jolted awake, screaming and trying to brush them off me. But there was nothing there, and Julian was stroking my forehead and telling me not to worry and that I'd just had a nightmare and there was nothing to be scared of. I didn't know how long I'd been asleep, or why I was still so tired. I said we should go because we still needed to get to the Botanic Gardens, but he said that I wasn't well and that it would be better to just stay here so I could rest. I started to feel a bit nervous about still being here when we'd only come to pick up the notebooks. I never meant to stay this long. And even though I felt safer with Julian here, I was still worried that if we didn't get out soon, the ghosts might come back. And there was no way of telling how angry they would be if they did come back, or what they might do. But I didn't have the energy to try and persuade Julian that we should leave, and anyway I was so tired and my eyes were trying to close again. I didn't want him to think I was rude though, or that I didn't care about what he'd been telling me, and I apologised for falling asleep while he was talking. He said that it didn't matter and asked me what my nightmare had been about. I didn't want to tell him. I thought he might think I was making light of his pain and Elena's death. So I just made up a story about dreaming that I was at a wild animal park and being chased around by a giant emu that was trying to peck me. That was actually a true story from when I was little, but I can't say I've ever had nightmares about it. He seemed to believe it though. Then an emu was here in the apartment, but it wasn't trying to peck me, and actually, it said it could fly me home, but I can't remember why I didn't go. But maybe I was just writing about it and I got confused and thought it was here. I'm sure I remember it being here though. Why didn't I just go home with it if it was here? I don't know, but it doesn't matter now anyway. I just need to keep writing and then go and stop thinking that I can change things. I can't change it, but I'm so scared. I want the pain to end, but I'm so terrified of what comes afterwards. I need to stop getting so confused though, because otherwise even if someone ever reads it, they won't be able to understand anything, and I want them to know what happened to me.